minute. Will you please call the roll?
Good afternoon. Pete Wildebohr,
Present.
Melissa Mason. Here. Josie Barnhart. Here. Pat Bradford. I am here. Stephanie Craybill.
Here.
Hugh McManus.
Present.
And Stephanie Walker.
Point before we say this pledge, I'll be leading today. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you, board members. At this time, I will entertain an approval of the agenda.
So moved.
Motion, second. Motion, second, any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed? That passes 6-0. I just want to kind of start out and just give you some information. This is not any judgment, and I will do my own opinions later on. Obviously, there was a county commissioner meeting yesterday that we do want to thank the county commissioners for the $5.5 million additional funding that they shared with us. As one of the county commissioners pointed out, it was actually 9.2 if you add in nurses, pre-K, mental health, etc. We want to thank them for that. There was a question, and it'll be, I'm going to have Ms. Sutton speak in just a moment. There was some questions about how much money we have in our fund balance. That will be covered just a little bit. And then Mr. Vogel told me yesterday and shared one opportunity or one option. Mr. Vogel, would you please share with everyone what you shared with me yesterday?
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you.
I shared with the chair, and he asked me to share with the whole board today the fact that there is a statutory provision, General Statutes 115C-431, that's called Procedure for Resolution of Dispute between Board of Education and Board of County Commissioners. This is not to suggest that there's something horribly adversarial between the two boards, but it's just important as your board attorney that I inform you, the board, of your rights. The statute provides that if the Board of Education determines that the amount of money appropriated to the local current expense fund or the capital outlay fund, or both, by the Board of County Commissioners is not sufficient to support a system of free public schools, then the chairman of the Board of Education and the chairman of the Board of the County Commissioners shall arrange a joint meeting of the two boards that's to be held within 7 days after the day of the county commissioner's decision on the school appropriations, which was yesterday. So in other words, such a joint meeting of the two boards would have to be held 7 days from yesterday, so in other words, by next Monday. If there is to be such a joint meeting, prior to the meeting, the senior resident superior court judge will appoint a mediator unless two boards agree to jointly select a mediator. But just to be clear, the joint meeting is not a mediation. It's a joint meeting of the two boards, and the mediator merely presides at the joint meeting and acts as a neutral facilitator of disclosures and statements of positions and efforts to negotiate an agreement regarding the board's differences. That certainly sounds a bit like a mediation, but that's not the role. It's just kind of to be a referee while the two boards conduct a joint meeting. The statute provides that at this joint meeting, the entire school budget shall be considered carefully and judiciously. The two boards should make a good faith effort to resolve the differences that have arisen between them. I'll note that there's kind of a second step if that joint meeting doesn't bring a result. The statute provides that if no agreement is reached at the joint meeting of the two boards, then the mediator shall, at the request of either board, commence formal mediation immediately or within a reasonable period of time. And the mediation is held in accordance with rules and standards adopted under a particular chapter of the general statutes regarding mediated settlement agreements. And unless otherwise agreed by both boards, the following people are the people who will be at the mediation: the chair of each board or the chair's designee, the superintendent of the school district and the county manager or their designees, the finance officer of each board, and the attorney for each board. And then there's a whole process that goes through. If mediation is then unsuccessful, then there's a calculation that the statute calls for with respect to funding. But with respect to capital outlay funding, there's authority to file a lawsuit by the school board against the county commission. That's a lot of information, but it's just to let you know that you, the school board, have an option to convene a joint meeting as a step one if you're of the view that the amount of money appropriated to the local current expense fund or the capital outlay fund, or both, by the county commissioners is not sufficient to support a system of free public school. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you very much. That's an option. Please understand that that's not, we're not saying that that's the way we need to go. We're just laying it out. Yes, Mr. Fraser.
Two questions for clarity on this. So county commissioners have to have their budget in by June 30th. So we, I don't know if we have time to get all this rolling, if we were so choose. And are we allowed to do this at a later point in the year, like not right at the very beginning? And also wanted to just point out that Charlotte Meck did this several years ago. They sued their school board, the school board sued their county commissioners, and it was horrible. So I just wanted to say that there, if you want to go look all that up, and they did actually a case study on that at one of our NCSBA conferences. So just before we would even entertain that, we should probably do a little homework.
I think Mr. Vogel has. Vogel, did you share with me something about, was it Wake County or Charlotte Meck?
It was Charlotte that did it.
Yeah, this has occurred, Mr. Chair. This has occurred in various counties. It's not necessarily a common thing, but it does happen. And as Ms. Crable noted, it did happen in Charlotte-Mecklenburg schools just a few years ago. It's where I happen to live and work and where my children went to school, so I'm very aware of it. I don't believe it resulted in a lawsuit. I think there was a joint meeting of the two boards. I think there was a mediation of the two boards, and a resolution was reached.
I'm just going to read, have a couple more. Once that, let me get a couple more information, we'll come back to you. And, please remember that we did ask for 10.1 million, we will give them 5.5. And please, remind me, I know that we reached out on 2 different occasions to try to set up, might have been 2 or 3, but we tried to set up, it's 2. We tried on 2 different occasions, myself talking to their chair, to set up a meeting prior to their budget. And we were fortunately told that I was told originally, yes, let's do it. Included reached out to her alternate at the commissioner level, and we could not do that. So we did try to do that on multiple occasions. Ms. Bradford.
Just clarity, I'm not speaking in favor or against what has been said, but if the money's not sufficient, the chairs call a joint meeting of all boards, both boards, and you have to do it in 7 days, so and so and so and so. If that doesn't resolve the issue, then the next step is the mediation between just the chairs, the county manager, the super, the finance people, and so on. So two-step process is what we said. I'm just asking for clarity. I took notes. Oops. I'm sorry, did you hear me, Mr. Vogel?
So, Mr. Chair, I think I heard her kind of summarize the step 1, step 2, and I think I heard it correctly. Step 1, the joint meeting, and if that doesn't yield a successful resolution for the school board or the county commission can request a formal mediation. Those are the first 2 steps.
And please understand too,
And I think, Mr. Chair, you're about to say it's completely optional. None of this is required. something that the school board can choose to do. It's not required to do so.
We do have, other options. We can, move forward with the 5.5, which Sutton is going to share with us, remind us exactly what that looked like. We can also look at some other options along the way. Mr. Moran, I think you had your hand up.
Yeah. When you asked for 2 different meetings, did you get a response as to, what was the response?
Thank you so much for asking. That's a great question. Actually talked to their chair directly. He said, sounds like a great idea. Let's set it up. Have your clerk talk to our clerk. We did. Ms. Bowie called over there and received, I'll let Ms. Bowie speak for herself.
So when I reached out, I was just made aware that at this time, meetings could not be scheduled due to scheduling and due to conversations that had been held. So they did not give me a definitive answer, but they did let me know that due to scheduling, they could not put either of the meetings on the calendar at that time.
And I know, Ms. Bowie is correct. It was at least on 2 different occasions she reached out and told that. Well, I think he had a call.
Oh, okay.
He was in
So there's been no more response from them about this meeting whatsoever. That has to bother all of us, just the fact how that didn't happen for whatever. And the answer that was given certainly is not satisfactory with the school board, the second largest employee, and the county commissioners to talk about our kids and our staff. And we're here to do our very best not to reduce. People focus on our meetings here and what we say. There's a lot of negativity, but we're talking about the bad. I'm probably as guilty as anyone as well, but we have so much good. I can't believe that anyone really realizes what this will do to the morale, and morale affects effectiveness and academics and behavior and performance, just all those things. I just thank you for answering. I'm just totally taken aback by that answer.
Mr. Chair, have we heard any follow-up from either the endowment ask or the Head Start grant that we have applied for? I don't know if you can speak to that, Dr. Faust, but just, I know that we were reaching out different avenues of funding sources, and so I don't know if we had any answers for those.
Not from the endowment. That's still in the works.
So just no answer. And then, so we have heard back about the Head Start grant?
Head Start, we will be notifying the board.
Okay,
Yeah,
all right.
notify the board.
Thank you.
Follow up to that. Yesterday, they approved the 5.5, and then they approved 12 pre-K classrooms. That's separate from the endowment ask. Is that correct?
So those, yes, to your question, I think it's 1.9, is that what
Yes.
that number was? That's classrooms that they had put in, so that's reoccurring funds for pre-K.
But remember, they talked about they were going to cut it down to 10, and then we had 2 out there, and then we asked the endowment. So is it your possible understanding that the endowment could still consider, and then they come around and cover that for the county? Or is that dead in the water, or do we just not want to talk about it?
So we don't know. I don't know
Okay.
just yet, and hopefully we'll know soon from the endowment.
Okay.
Yeah, real soon.
I just want to turn it over to Sutton, let her remind us of what the original recommendation was for the 5.5 million.
If it would be okay, can I backtrack a little bit and talk about fund balance? So as you heard yesterday, we're anticipating, let me start over. You might recall, during the year, we had to budget an additional $5 million of fund balance. We had already, in our initial budget, budgeted $4 million. The additional $5 million was because some state and federal estimates were off in our planning budget, and so that's the reason we had to come back and request that additional appropriation. At the same time, we got the approval for the appropriation. We also implemented a spending freeze, restriction where we moved deadlines for year-end up, and then we also had a freeze on hiring from outside the school system, and it like a hiring freeze, I guess, maybe is the best way to say that. And so the hope was putting those two things in place would help us not use that entire $5 million that we had appropriated during the year. Looking at our current revenue and expenses, we are seeing that, including that fund balance appropriation, our revenue is exceeding expenses by about $2 million, which is what I shared yesterday. I still stand firm on we should not be using fund balance in this year's budget. We really need that money. As we could see just from last year, sometimes the revenue that we project for state or federal, depending on how that state budget comes in, the revenue may not be what we're anticipating because we're using historical data when we're doing that. Or either this year we do have a biannual budget, so hopefully that makes that revenue a little bit closer. But we need to have fund balance, so if revenue is off, we have something to help us out and not have to do reduction in force during the year. We also, with this year, because of reduction of positions, a large amount, we have to have budget set aside for budget attrition. In case the turnover doesn't happen as quickly as we projected, we need to have some money for that, along with, there's also cash flow we have to think about, state and federal and grant reimbursements, where we are upfronting those expenses, and then we have to submit information to get reimbursements back. And normally, new federal money doesn't even drop for us to start requesting that money, normally October or November. So I think those are all things to consider and reasons why we would not want to include a fund balance appropriation in the budget. Just a quick summary on what we learned yesterday at the county meeting. So as Mr. Whittemore had mentioned, we did receive, the county commissioners did approve an increase in funding of $5.5 million in Fund 20. That's our local current expense. So that's going to give us $99.6 million county appropriation in our local current expense. They also approved to continue funding of $1.9 million for our pre-K centers. As we have talked about before, that level of funding is the same as current year. However, it funded less classrooms. So even though the funding level stayed the same. So that's not an increase. That's what we were already receiving this year. So I think it's important for us to understand that. So when you also wanted to mention, they talked about the county will continue providing the same number of nurses and mental health counselors, and the cost to them is $2.1 million. They mentioned that yesterday. That $2.1 million is not included in our budget. That's included in their budget, but it's services that are being provided to the school system. So if you include that, the total support provided by the county is approximately $103.6 million. But if you look at the revenue that we're actually going to receive from the county, the number is approximately $101.5 million. So the difference is that 2.1 for the nurses and school mental health counselors.
Can I ask a question about that? So could you explain to us again how we've done that in the past, like with our nurses and with our mental health providers? It's my understanding, and maybe I'm wrong in that we used other community partners to help us with those services that we weren't necessarily paying for in full price or half price or discounted price. So could we just get just an update on that part too?
So we have consistently paid the county for the use of school nurses, but for the mental health, the school-based mental health providers, we have for the past, I think 3 or 4 years, paid the county for part of that service to us. Prior to that, we used community partners for school-based mental health, but we never used community partners for school nursing.
Yeah.
And when using community partners for the school-based mental health, we used, I think, maybe 4 or 5 different agencies and would create partnerships with them with particular schools so that we could make referrals to them, and then the families could work with that agency, and we were allowing those services to happen at school so it could be school-based, but there was no dollar cost to us or to the families. But I do also understand, and hearing back from some families, that some of those private agencies were, if there was an insurance, particular insurance cost or some details with insurance, there might be a copay, and that was never what we anticipated in those services. But with the school-based mental health services by the county, there is no copay.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I was going to ask with the pre-K classrooms, I know we said 12 classes. What is the net of students that we're serving change? Are we able to still service the amount of students by having a couple more kids in each class, or is the 12 classroom a decrease in servicing how many students?
So separate from this budget, we do, like I had mentioned before, this year we received county money for the pre-K, those pre-K classes, those 12 classes. The county has approved for us to carry over any unspent funds due to lapsed salaries. And so we are planning to use that along with potentially some Title I funding. So we're still in the middle of this, getting this together, but our hope is we would still be able to provide service to those 12 classrooms, but we're still waiting to hear back for Head Start and some other funding sources to know that for sure. So I can't at this point say for certain that we're serving the same number of students.
But that is the goal, to serve the same number of students that we are currently serving. Right.
That is what we're going to try to do, but until we know what our revenue is going to look like, once we hear back from Head Start, we do not know if we will actually be able to do that. Thank you.
I'm a little iffy on the nurses and the mental health. The number, I see what it is now, but it seems like it's less. It's at 2.1 for both of those things, right? Or it's 2.1 each?
For both.
But at some point, there was almost a $3 million and a $2 to $3 million for each one out there in the discussion. So they just cut that amount back?
So I want to provide some clarification. I'll ask Julie to jump in and save me if I get off track here. So during the budget process, when we were reviewing where we felt like we could have reductions, one area that we were looking at was the school mental health counselors that were referred to here. So we were paying, like Julie had mentioned, the county for those services that they were providing, and we had a contract with them. During the budget process, we were going to eliminate that contract. And so that's what the county is picking up here, something that we were going to eliminate, but it was their staff providing the service. And then similarly, the nurses, we were going to reduce the number of nurses. The county chose that since that's a priority for them, so they picked up the cost of those nurses, but even though we were going to reduce part of our contract. So the county has always, they've never billed us 100% of the cost of those nurses. We've always paid for part, they've always paid for part. And so when we said, you know, what would however many less the cost be for us as we were trying to balance our budget, they said that they would pick up those nurses that we were reducing by. So that's a little bit more information related to those two topics.
Thank you.
If that helps.
Just curious, do we have a number, pre-K, those numbers now versus what we were trying to get to?
Meaning the number of students being
Right.
served?
Yes, ma'am.
You have that?
We will have a full report from you when we actually receive the update information from the federal department of where we stand. Right now, we are waiting for them to give us the official word of where we stand, and we'll have a full presentation for the board. We're still waiting for them for their official word.
What was it this past?
Oh,
How many?
students we served? We served a little over 1,000.
And this additional money hopefully would serve, increase that to what?
Additional money?
I think it's the same.
Yeah, we would, yeah, exactly.
Okay. Thank you.
At this point, board members, I think we've talked about several options. We have obviously the option to move forward with the $5.5 million and look at the suggestion from our CFO or the advice of our CFO and our superintendent. We can look at possibly looking at some fund balance where we're at somewhere around $3 million. Look at some of that maybe to help support some positions, et cetera. We can look at other options. We can look at the option that Mr. Vogel brought up. But I would entertain a motion so we can maybe move forward at this point. Ms. Fairbrother.
Are we at some point today going to get a briefing on what we think the 5.5 looks like?
Yes, she's going to step into that.
Okay, all right.
Yep. In fact, why don't we go ahead and do that before let's do that and then we'll.
Yes, I think we should hear some of that before we start,
Yes.
making rash decisions.
There we go.
Yes, so as we were building the budget, or thinking about the budget, developing different drafts, one thing that we were taking off the top of that, your request for the 10.1 million was, we were setting aside 2.3 million to cover the budget for natural attrition, as we've talked about. And then the remaining, let me see if I have that note. And so if you take the 5.5 million and you back out the amount that we were setting aside for budget for natural attrition, that would leave about 3.1 million approximately that the board could decide which positions that they want to cover with that. Just in planning purposes, we looked at possibly 29 certified positions and 23 classified positions, but depending on, because it really does depend on which positions you choose, and we would just use an average salary, just similar to the process we went through when we did this exercise before, would be able to see, what you guys would want to do based on your priorities. Does that make sense?
So is any of this in writing for us to look at and absorb? Can we put it on the screen? Because we did, to your point, we already did say that, and prioritize what we thought were the most important. And so I would just like to see how that's going to play out. I mean, I have my notes, but they're just notes.
Well, 428 is the last written about our 1 through priorities.
Right.
And the cost.
And I believe that EC teachers and TAs were at the top of everyone's list.
EC teachers system.
I believe the family life, you crossed that out, what, 400?
I did cross that out.
419,000,
Yep.
is that right?
And what does that mean, crossed out?
Cost.
Oh, cost out.
So
Okay,
that-
sorry.
so basically, that's how much we cost to keep family life education as it currently is.
In the same,
Exactly like it is.
delivering like it is now, okay.
Exactly how it is now, 419,000.
And I do have a question with that, because the label is that they're underneath the central office umbrella. So my question is, I know some of our specialist teachers are split between campuses. It's my understanding they are not, our specialist teachers are not under the central office umbrella, but there are some who share campus sites. And so I'm wondering, can we not do that with our family life staff? I'm wondering why were they in the central office umbrella, but somebody else who also is a campus site might not be? And I don't.
That's because of the funding.
Okay.
Because the funding source, and so if they're reporting that, Dr. Faison said they don't report to a school leader. So in an effort, if you are campus-based, then you're on the budget for a school.
For the school.
If not, then you are on one of the 7's budget. That's how it is.
So
And
our
they-
specialist teachers are on the 7th, one of the.
Oh, no, they're on the school.
Yes, like,
They report to principals.
Ms. Mason?
I did a little math because I have my board budget priorities sitting in front of me. If we were only look at the EC teachers and EC teacher assistants, according to these calculations, and saving all of those positions, it's roughly 4.2 million. So that definitely comes short of the 3.1 that Ms. Sutton had mentioned remaining for positions.
75 positions.
And I just wanted to go exploring for a minute. I have in my memory, and I don't know if it's correct or not, and Ms. Barnhart, you may know, we talked about that we had some ARPA money, federal dollars, ESSER money, whatever you want to call it, and that paid for a ton of new curriculum, correct? But there is a leftover amount of $2.1 million towards curriculum in this budget that's not being paid for with ARPA money, because that's over. It's coming straight out of the budget. So my question would be, am I right so far? And I just, I'm thinking outside the box. Can we not freeze that for a year and appropriate that 2.1 million and put it here where we need it and not spend that money this year? Yeah.
So we wouldn't have, so you're saying don't purchase the resources for the students this year?
Well, we've already purchased, what, $4 million worth? Am I right?
Yes,
So can we
so,
not just put that new purchase on hold until we get out of this crisis that we're in? I'm just
So-
looking for money.
okay.
That's a big chunk.
So each year, so what happens, the big chunk was to get the students started. So that's all the texts and all those things. So each year, the students also receive the workbooks, the license, so they can use the things that are on their Chromebooks. So they have to have that to actually, or not Chromebooks, sorry, the technology. So they have to have that each year to follow along and work with it. So it's like, if they didn't have that, they don't have the curriculum piece for that year. So they wouldn't have what they needed. So it's like they wouldn't have the curriculum, that piece. So the teacher would just be using this part. So the students wouldn't have anything in their hands.
So you're saying we're going to have a $2.1 million reoccurring expense for curriculum?
It's not 2.1. Yeah, well, whatever, I don't think it's 2.1. It's like 350 for $350,000, let's say, for reading for the whole district, right? So, and I'll have to pull that up and you give me a second, but it is broken down by each area. So it's by the workbooks that they need. So if you give me 1 second, I'll pull that up.
I'm confused. Is it not a 2.1?
I don't
Let me-
think it's,
I'll help
I
you.
don't think
Let me
it's
help you.
2.1 for, if it is, it's for every piece of curriculum in the entire district, for
It
every
is.
subject, every.
It is.
So you're talking kindergarten, you're talking all the way up to high school.
And that will be reoccurring every year.
Yes.
Interesting, no.
But that's for
That's normal.
every
That's for
student to
everything.
receive. Think about that. That's every student to get what they need, every textbook, everything they need for instruction. 25,000 students.
So we bought with the government money the startup plan?
There's one-time expenses associated with all the curriculum adoptions, and that was a large cost, even though I know the 2 million seems like a large cost as well, but the startup was a lot more than that, and that we used the ESSER funding for the startup piece.
So think about all the tech, so let's say the novels, right? So we don't have to buy the novels anymore. We don't have to buy all the books that the students actually have in their hands to read. We don't have to buy that every
So back
year.
up, what curriculum is this we're talking about? We're talking about wit and wisdom and?
We're talking about every piece of curriculum. We're talking about my perspectives in high school. We're talking about biology. We're talking about every piece, when you think about curriculum, we're talking about Elevate that we use for our ML students. We're talking about everything.
Does that include the Participate program that we use at Gregory?
Comes through the HR budget.
Oh, that one does?
Yes, through the participant contract that we have to
Okay.
employ the number of teachers that we need.
But that's kind of a curriculum-ish thing?
Provides the staffing.
So
It's the staff.
Participate is the staffing, so.
Oh, okay, I'm sorry.
Yes, and so that's how you get the people, and then there's a curriculum, but that's not included with participate.
Gotcha,
Yeah.
okay. We have to buy that separate.
Did you have more to share?
That's all I have at this time, but I'll be glad to throw some numbers in. If you tell me how many of what type of position, I can try to work up to provide whatever assistance you need my help with.
Can you go back to what you and Dr. Faust originally presented with the 5.5?
Yeah.
That's what Mr. Faber was looking for.
Yeah, so originally, like I had said, we were using 2.3 million for the budget for the natural attrition, and then we were also budgeting, hold on a second, I'm trying to- 29 teachers and 23 EC teacher assistants.
I heard from one person this week that they were talking about that. Can you refresh our memory on, the ratio of like, say, kindergarten, first grade teacher assistants? So we talked a lot about EC TAs, but what about, in those younger grades?
Hold on just a second, I don't have those memorized like,
HR, so
Dr.
you're
Lawrence
at-
does, so hold on a second, I have to bring up my
What's our
cheat sheet.
ratio on that?
Are you talking more so about the class size rule?
Well, the
Or
class
the
size
state?
rule, but how many TAs do we have? When I was principal, we had a TA in every single kindergarten class. We had one in first grade. We have that now.
That would be, HR could help too.
If you want the numbers,
Sorry?
if you want the numbers, I have them.
Let's go ahead and do that while
Okay.
we're looking that up. Please, if you don't mind.
So it's 1.6 is what we have for curriculum this year coming up. And for Wit and Wisdom is 399. Eureka is 540 here. And I say because I'm pulling up this sheet, and I want to make sure I'm pulling up, I hope I'm pulling up the right one at this time. We're looking at the math curriculum for the whole district for 200,000 for that, and that's the for middle school and part of high school with Math 1. We have our foundations. We have Haggerty, but there again, we don't even have to pay for that this year. So it is everything, Study Sync with it, which is our middle school, My Perspectives, our science kits. It's just everything that we have. We took out our social studies. So, and like I said, the total for this year is coming up is 1.68 from the sheet that I'm looking at, and we did have some different sheets, and I pulled up this sheet, and I don't know if there has been some changes, so we had to do some cuts and some different things, so you might have something different, Ashley.
Yeah, I would have to, I don't have that information with me,
Yeah.
but I'll be glad to
Yeah,
provide
she can
that.
pull that. But I just want you to know, it is not just elementary and a reading program or math and a reading program. It is all the way from kindergarten all the way to high school. The only thing that is not in here is the pre-K creative curriculum. But when you think about anything that students need to access the material to learn, that is what that is paying for. So to put that on hold would actually be to put academics on hold.
When did we buy this?
And also including EC kids. So you're putting,
2020?
I'm sorry?
Was this 2020 when we bought it? Was it 2020, year 2020 or
We-
2021? When we started this, because we used ESSER money, what year did we start this?
We adopted different curriculum in different
Different times,
years,
yeah,
so I
yeah,
believe math was first.
Math was Yeah, 21, yeah.
Eureka, and then Hegarty and the others, but then there's the science, the biology, those have just been
What
going
do we
on.
do before this?
We always have had some curriculum.
Yeah.
Yeah, you have to have something to teach.
Well, I know that, but I mean, I'm just, you spent $4 million and now we've got a recurring $2 million every year. So were we spending that kind of money before?
The
That's what I'm
state
trying to
gives you,
determine.
yeah, so, I actually would have to go back and, Ms. Sutton would have to go back and look at how much we spent, but you always have to have something. I can tell you the quality is not always the same. And just like the principals share with you about the K-2 report cards, the first thing that teachers talked about when I arrived was, please help us with a quality curriculum. And you can go back and you guys remember from when we purchased the curriculum, the teachers had been asking because they were searching for things. The amount of time they were looking to try to find things from the curriculum that we had. We were one of, maybe we were the only district in the state using the curriculum that we were using because it was not vetted and it was extremely cheap. And our teachers were basically having to pull all different types of resources, and the kids did not have text in their hands. They were learning to read without text in their hands.
And I will add to that, we did not have the consumables, or if we did, we had very few.
Yes,
so,
exactly.
It was more like what you're saying, not purchasing those consumables every year and just having the screen and not really having a booklet to write in or anything like that. So I think we would be moving back towards that if we were not to have that built into the budget.
Mr. Vince, do you have any hand up?
I'm just questioning where we are in this discussion. Again, as guilty as anyone, we're all going back. We're all trying to turn over a magic stone. I came in hard bent on trying to do something with these priorities. If we can't, at some point, as hard as it's going to be, we've got to make some decisions. And again, I'm as guilty as anyone. We get here and we start turning over everything we can to find a solution when in fact we're going to have to be the bearers of that. So here are our priorities. If we're going to change those, let's change them. But I'd like to try to move forward. We're still where we were the first time we ever met. And it's good discussion. Don't get me wrong. We're all being educated. But our priority list, EC teachers were first. EC teacher assistants were second. Pre-K classrooms were third. I think you ranked it 3.5. AIG teachers were fourth. Assistant principals fourth. 4.5, itinerant teachers, then family life, then capital. Total of that was what, 17 million. Now I know some of the numbers have changed based upon the commissioners as well as, and you did mention that by the way, actually, that over time we might get money back and or not spend it, so that's helped. Maybe we need to meet with the county commissioners again.
So yeah, a couple things. One, I was just doing a little bit of quick calculation, and if we're talking 1.6 million for curriculum, and you divide that by like 25,000 students, it's only like $67 per student, that we're talking about. Is that worth us, putting things, trying to prioritize, which is more important, having curriculum to teach or having teachers to teach, but nothing to teach? So I guess what I'm looking for too is where are we in, as of June 30th, are we gonna be pretty solid on who is staying and who is leaving? I mean, meaning retiring and resigning, that kind of thing, not who is staying and who is leaving because we're asking them to do that. So I know that's one thing we've been holding off on for a while is I don't know what we're going to do exactly because we're waiting to see who's leaving and then to see where we're going to put the marbles in the hole. Is that what Chris says, putting the marbles in? So yeah, so that's why I guess I'm just trying to figure out where we are. Not trying to figure out, you'll have to tell us, because I'm not going to figure it out. You'll have to tell us. Where are we on that, and versus what our priorities are? Yeah.
So can I help clear? And I think this
Yeah.
is where the more clarity, and it's always worked as from finance and then myself in trying to explain. So remember, if we go back to the list that we gave you with all those positions, get us to balance that budget. And so what we were sharing is that, and when Chris came up with the marbles, so when people resign, they come off of a different list. So it's hard to track because they just don't come in packages of 15 positions that are going to be here. Our goal is to get to that dollar amount where we can balance. And so there will be, and there have been, natural attrition that has taken place. And we run that weekly, and that's the report that I share with them, or they, through personnel, that we talk about, because we have to get to that number. That's the number. And the frozen salaries are, if we don't get to that number, that carry over until they actually, some are saying, okay, I'll resign in October. So I have to be able to pay those individuals through that time. If it's over the amount that is budgeted for, then you have to do something different. And that's not the conversation that we want to have. Because we're trying to get June 30th, we have to make sure that we are able to, because with those local funds.
Pay people.
Pay people. So those local funds, so anything that's carried over starting July 1, we then have to look and say, okay, well, board, we don't have the revenue that is coming in. And this is a unique situation because our state approves the budget late. Our the dollars come in October. And so what Ashley was actually saying is with that money that drops over into fund, we have to keep the payroll going until everyone says, oh, we've approved the budget. Now we're going to send you money. No one cares if people don't have a budget because they hadn't approved theirs. But we have to keep the budget going. So it's not technically, when she's saying that, oh, well, there's 2 or 1.2 and then there's some that are from frozen salary, that's technically not real money because we won't have funding for feds until it's usually about October. And that's special ed, all that money comes in and we've got to render services for kids without having a budget. So go back, if you look at the sheet that we gave you, our goal is to get to that bottom dollar that is going to balance it. So when those positions are coming, some of those are coming out, some we're moving around, some, but it's through the natural attrition. If the natural attrition gives us all of that revenue that we need, then those positions won't look like that, if that makes sense. And I know you've had several questions and that's been the topic, but what we had to present is how do we get 20 million off from ESSER 10 and then our budget 10, and that's how that came up. Yes.
Can you give us the state of the marbles? Can you just go over the state of the marbles as of today?
So we haven't moved. The only people we've moved are central office. Those that are in the school, because we hadn't had a meeting where it's like there was a voted, which is making me nervous because people have gone home now. And so now we've got to call people over the telephone and say, oh, you're reporting to this, where we would have, HR would have gone out and said, these are the 4 positions that we can put you in. So we're just in a
Can you
holding.
refresh us on the state of the marbles? Where are we with marbles? Last time I remember there was like 7 or some that were still in flux. Does that make, am I right? But other than that, they were all in holes?
So everyone's in holding right now, except for those that are from the central office that we have moved. But if you were in a school setting, we haven't shared any information with them. So they are just sitting, so they have positions that they're waiting and ready to move people around to, but we just hadn't. So they're literally stockpiling.
The waiting is on.
So kind of along the same lines as what Ms. Bradford was getting to and what you just alluded to. We had the document that said 279 people. And some of that we've taken care of. We've made announcements that, we're not continuing with, our chief equity officer. We're not continuing with our chief communications officer. So we've got that pile of money. But that whole list, I'm just trying to, in my mind, envision where those people are going. I mean, a lot of those are central office people, but a lot of them are, AIG teachers or the family life. And so certainly we have like a plan A, if this, then that, if this, then that. But there's a lot of people on that list. I don't want to say people, a lot of positions on that list
So it doesn't work that way, what you're saying.
But we have to add up the money.
But, right, so we can't carry everything across the line on July 1. It's impossible because we don't have the revenue. So what we are waiting, so all of the natural attrition has taken place.
Okay.
Well, I won't say it has been, but up until
A lot of
June 18th. So we have a number of how many people have left the district up until now. So then what we have to say is, okay, this is where these positions are. Do we fill that vacancy or do we hold it? And so it's almost like a put in, a take out, a put in, a take out. But if you put in and put in, it's not going to balance. So there's got to be, out of those natural attritions, some of those positions won't be a put in. It'll just be removed from the budget. And that's why we have, we're just set and we're just waiting because we can't give you, well, we can tell you how many people have at this point, how many are there, but it's not going to match your list that you have because, as I said, X amount of teacher assistants, X amount of this, those were overages to get to that number. But the people don't technically leave in that same form of fashion.
Okay, I guess, I think we're.
It's hard, I'll be honest with you.
We're just like dancing around, doing the salsa, because there are positions on the list that we know that we can't deal with, that their skill set doesn't match any of the openings that we have. So we offer them something else. There are
very few that.
Okay, but there's 279 on that list.
How few?
So it seems to, and I guess because some of it is just, we're hearing in the community that we aren't going to be losing any student-facing positions. We aren't going to be losing any EC positions. And I just don't see how that's possible from this 279 to all of our, moving, people leaving. So I guess I'm just trying to figure out, certainly we have some idea that we can be telling us and then telling some of our employees that maybe that they should be looking for another job.
No, that's reduction in force. If
No,
we're
I
telling,
mean,
no, but I'm saying if I tell you to look for another job, that's a reduction in force.
Okay, so
we're not doing a reduction in
No,
force.
and
We're doing a natural attrition, so that's why we have to have a voted on budget so that then we can then put it in motion. So it's not going to be, and I'll go back to, it will not go back, it's not going to be as clean as the list that I gave you because that was a recommendation to get to the balanced budget of the 20 million. If you want to do something else, that's why I say if you want to do something else on there, you have to take out, and then Ashley's ready with average salaries, so you've got to put something, so if you say, okay, I want to add those back in, so we've got to pull that out of another.
Right, and we did that exercise and we came up with 10.1. So we know we're not getting that. So now we're back to, we know what our number is. And how do we vote on that number if we don't know what that number entails?
You are voting on a balanced budget is what you're voting on.
Right, and I'm prepared to do that, to say we only have, 5.5 million to work with.
Right.
And so you, Dr. Faust, and Ashley, and all of your team say the only way we're going to get there is if we eliminate this, this, and this. I mean,
Or-
how come we can't do that? That's what I'm just having a
Because
hard time with that.
we can't build a budget in the, so I think, and, correct me if I'm
Maybe I'm
wrong, I think what the
misunderstanding.
board is wanting to do is build a budget sitting here, and that's impossible for us. Like, it has taken, we started late December, all the way up until March, multiple meetings, and that was not just one meeting, that was multiple meetings. Let's move this, let's do this, and it's impossible for you to do, because the reason why it's impossible is that there are different funding sources that are tied to individuals and programs and all these other things. And the reason why I said very few individuals, so I know that if a diesel mechanic cannot go in unless they're certified. So those are specific, and we call those essential jobs. So those essential jobs, we have to rehire. I mean,
Right.
those types of things. But what we're saying is, we created that list from overages. So meaning, when I say overages, what the state says we should have, and then what would still give us some cushion. That's where that list came from. So when we're saying you won't lose the student facing, there won't be as many people, but there will be people in those positions. You just won't have as many.
I think that's where I was going to ask. So today, if we discuss moving forward with the 5.5 prior to everything officially happening, we'll know, hey, I know we talked about 279, but because this board was able to get 5.5 million, that added back roughly 76 people. And we have this priority list that we had, and Mr. May was talking about the ECTAs and teachers were at the top of the list of everybody on the board. So what I hear my colleagues asking for is, if we vote today for a number, are we going to see now, because a few months ago it was a projection of here's where the areas lied, and then looking at what the county commissioners are getting, they're giving 1.9 for pre-K. So we're still getting that, but it's no longer in our budget, so we still have that. And then we're getting some mental health and nurses support, which came from our ESSER funding. So the 20 million pot we were looking at came from the 10 million that we knew we weren't going to get before. So I think that's what my colleagues, I'm sitting here having the conversation is, if we whatever we decide with approving or denying the budget today, will we get that finalized, here's where everything fell, prior to it falling?
So that will be a work in process, because what happens with this budget, it is like a 1,000-piece puzzle, because it's not as simple as when we present it to you really simplistic. But yes, those positions will go back in, because we will balance it with the 5.5, but we still have to take off any of those that are, when I say take off the budget, take off the ledger, if that's the word that I use, the ledger of who can't take us through the entire year.
And the only other way that we can get more money is students. I mean, this is what we've been told, or reevaluating our local supplements. Of this 99 million that we have, currently it's roughly 24 million is local supplements, and that was the discussion from a few years ago when the local supplements, the previous board was told 280 positions are going to get cut in 3 years, and this is where we're living.
Yeah.
So, not that it's something that I like or enjoy, but this is a conversation that we have to figure out a way to make up money. Is it more important to have more people in, or a small reduction in local supplements? I mean, and that's not an easy conversation either, but.
Ms. Bradford, and then I would really like just to
Yeah.
want to remind everyone that we do need a motion. We've allotted, again, we can go over our 2 o'clock, but.
I'm hoping we can move in that direction. Yesterday, the county said yes to our Fund 20, which gave us the 5.5 million. But we actually are getting $99.6 million. So if you round, you can round that up to 100. But the county approved yesterday $99.6 million for us. Now, That total, the total support from the county, Ms. Sutton just told us, was 103 million, .6. We could round that up to 104 million if we wanted to, with the actual revenue of being 101 million, $0.5. We have 8 to 12 days, depending on if your county business days or your county vacation days. So I think it might be helpful if we just go around, each one of us say, I'm in favor of this and I'm against this, so we get a feel for where we are right now. And I'm happy to start it. I'm against touching the fund balance. Absolutely 100% against touching the fund balance. I agree with Ashley 100%. And yesterday, while one county commissioner addressed that, I do not want to be standing there begging if we have a hurricane this year and say, oh, by the way, all of our schools are shut down, they have no power, and they're destroyed. Would you please give us some money? Oh, no, no, no. I do not want to be in that position. We will have to ask them for part of the money, but to get the lights back on the next day or whatever emergency, I want him to have some money to do that. If we've got $3 million, great. I am for meeting with the county commissioners. I love that idea. I hate that they denied us last time, but we don't have any time. So I'm against wanting to wait because I want to empower the staff to move forward. So that's where I am this moment. Now I want to know what y'all think too. It'll help me make up my mind where I want to go forward.
What do you think, Mr. McManus?
I feel like I'm cleaning the horse stable. I have to include AIG teachers with EC teachers. And I've been repetitive, I know I've said it. We can't take from the top for the lower, and we can't take from the lower from the top. So we're going to have to figure out something so that at least we maintain fairness to both, to all. No one can do anything until we make a decision. That's where we are.
Yeah.
You're trying to say something, but until we make the cut, we're the part of the puzzle that you got to design from. I get it. We give you the chip. So, but we've got to be fair to everyone. So, the face positions to me are more of a priority than anything.
100%.
Now, that's not a good answer.
What's face position, student facing?
You're actually involved with students.
Yes, student facing.
Yeah, and that's the best way I can answer this right now.
Thank you, sir. Mason?
I have to agree with what Mr. McManus has said. As far as our priorities, we said EC teachers, EC teacher assistants. The pre-K classrooms sound like they're covered, and so that moves us to the AIG teachers. And I agree that those are the 3 sections that we should be focusing on. I hate that we don't have numbers and we have to make a decision without numbers. I know that in speaking with, losing any EC staff is going to be a problem. In speaking with EC teachers in the district, they're overwhelmed. So that's very concerning to me to have to even consider that those are possible cuts. I think it would benefit us to meet with the commissioners, possibly, and so I would be in support of that. I don't know the feasibility of it as far as timing goes, or if that would even change their minds. So I'm disappointed that we have to even consider cuts, but the ones that I think are the most prioritized that we should be keeping as many as possible of are EC teachers, EC teacher assistants, and AIG teachers.
Thank you. Barnhart?
I mean, our priorities speak for themselves. We've already voted on that. I agree with that. We've talked about this. The only other, I have no problem meeting. For me personally, we've had some unexpected family medical issues, so my schedule has been crazy with just, I don't have the feasibility to be able to meet in the next few days. Just putting it out there for my fellow board members. The reality is, I think where the concern is we got a recap a few months ago. It's better than anticipated. We have more revenue because we went ahead and did a hiring freeze for a few months, so we have some more money. I would be okay looking at where we're at with that, and if we need for those top 3, just like my colleagues were saying, we need more funding to look at the fund balance, but I think we have to look at something else. If we're going to say we need to come from fund balance, we need to look at the local supplement is a huge chunk of our whole budget. And so if we're looking at we need more from the front end, then we need to reevaluate long-term, is this sustainable? Because I've said this from the beginning, that we need to have sustainable budget. We know 5.5 from the county has been sustainable. That is what we've heard. We're going to continue to advocate, and I've said from the state level, we have, when we have increases, the county needs to be familiarized with those as well so that they can continue to provide the increases for our staff that the state is going to be providing us as far as the budget concerns. But right now, I think that to continue the relationship with our county commissioners, I think that the 5.5 number is where we're at. I think that we would feel comfortable hearing the full list again now versus the projected list from a few months ago, and could give our feedback to you with that as well, focusing on those top 3 areas of the priorities that we listed. But that's kind of where my head's at.
Pedro?
So I get, mine is kind of the same way. I mean, I'm disappointed that the county commissioners couldn't see that we needed more money. And when we're the 3rd richest county in the state, and they aren't willing to do it, you know, and I just keep thinking back to like some of the bigger districts that ask for more money. Like I'll use Wake County as an example. They asked for $58 million, and we're all like, oh my God, that's like a lot of money. But they are about 5 times bigger than we are. Yeah. And so our 10 million and their 58 million are kind of right on par. So I just keep looking at that list of the positions that are on that list, and and with the teacher, the EC teachers and ECTAs, but I'm having a hard time voting for something that I don't know, because you know, people are watching, and how are we going to explain, you know, that this is our budget, yes, but we will have had minimal input, you know, just the teachers and TAs, which is better than no input. But there's just so many positions out there that are just hanging that I just don't know. You know, I just can't wrap my head. It's not for me to figure out, you know, it's for you guys to figure out. But I'm just having a hard time wrapping my head around the positions that we are going to lose, and we know we are. So we have to, and no matter what we call it, you know, the people that have jobs that are in those positions are sitting at home going, holy crapola, is this me? You know, and I wish somebody would just tell me that this is pretty likely, so that I can make my own choice to look for other employment if I want to. Or over the summer, you know, take a class or something that puts me in a different category where I could fit into a different hole. I'm just having a real hard time with that. And I can't imagine that you all, 7, you and the 7, don't have some things in mind on push comes to shove, I'm going to have to do this, I'm going to have to do that.
The worst case scenario is a reduction in force.
Right.
And that's what I told them. That's my nightmare.
Right. That's
all the
of our
others,
nightmares.
when you're saying there's people staying at home, they are just may not be at the same school or at the same, but they still have a job. That's what we're saying when anyone who wants to work. But our biggest fear is a reduction in force. That's a layoff.
But taking away a supplement, you're basically you're reducing people's salaries. I mean, there's no way in heck I can vote for that, because we've already did it. It's like, here's the carrot, throw it out there. Oh, nope, you can't have it now.
That's not, I said
You know,
long term, so I agree with you.
Okay.
We can't do that of just saying,
Okay.
here's this
I just
contract
wanted
and
to
I'm
make
going to
sure-
take it back.
Yeah.
No, but when you're looking at the hiring of the future down the road, like, anyway.
And then you got people working the same job making different salaries, you know, different supplements.
I have to just, I think Ms. Barnhart actually brought something up that got me thinking. It's not a good answer. We don't have a winner here. You know, my favorite thing, the rack or the guillotine. Would it be better for our staff and everything goes along with our decision, if we did reduce for a year the extra pay to keep more people employed. So had I rather know that people aren't losing their jobs because of what my additional local it's gone down. It's something, we've discussed everything else. That saves positions, maybe. I heard Ashley say, and y'all keep coming back to it, please don't mess with the fund balance. Plus the worst hurricane prediction year forever. But that is something maybe we do. It didn't answer, but it's certainly something that would save jobs.
And Mr., and I don't, okay,
I'm
sorry.
going to get my turn. You know, and at some point, I think we have to look at, and I value what Ms. Sutton has said, but, you know, we were all going home the other day with $1.1 million in our fund balance. We're happy. We're not, you know, happy, but it is something. Now, all of a sudden, we have $3 million. I'm going to throw it out there. I think that may be something we need to look at. I mean, I know we have one county commissioner, as one of my board members, one of my fellow board members mentioned, that said very clearly yesterday, you know, we're your fund balance. We got it. So, you know, if we can save somebody's job or you know, save a program that's very important, or, you know, be able to, you know, have the EC teachers, the AID teachers that we need in the classroom, and we go back to that. You know, I'm not saying spend it down and nothing. We were, you know, we were all, I mean, nobody was kicking and screaming when we said we have $1.1 million. Huh? I don't think it, no, well, we weren't happy about it, but I don't think, you know, we went home with that in our mind, and now all of a sudden we may have some more. Even if we take $1 million of it, that saves some jobs. Anyway, that's my thought. You know, I value the money that they, you know, over $100 million that the county commissioners have given us. Obviously, would love to have seen the $1.1 million, $10.1 million that we asked for, but unfortunately, we didn't get that. You know, we do have options. We can, you know, as Mr. Vogel brought up, and I'm just going to keep going back through the options. And we do need to make a motion because, as Dr. Faust has said and Ms. Sutton has said, and I agree with them 100%, we don't want folks to be sitting at home, you know, worried about what's going on. So we do need to make a decision. We can meet with the county commission. We can do that within 7 days. There's statutes that say that if they don't have an option, they can't say, no, we don't have time. You know, that is something we could do. We could move forward with the $5.5 million and say, you know, this is the plan that was presented to us. Move forward with that. We could look at fund balance, or at least a portion of the fund balance. But we do need to come up with, we can continue to talk about it and discuss our thoughts, but we do need a motion to move. I think at least, unless somebody has another, I think Ms. Barnhart brought up another idea, which is another option, you know, to address Ms. McMahon's, is maybe that's the way we want to go. So.
Ms. Barnhart brought up a list. She said if we could have a list of the 5.5, right? How long would it take to produce that for us? I mean, if you have it like on your computer, couldn't we like print it and pass it out?
What do you mean a
What
list?
the 5.5 gets us? Is that what you were asking for?
That's what I was asking for.
Yes, I mean,
Okay.
that's what
Show me that way somewhere.
the projection from 4 months ago might look different now because based on trying to get that dollar amount, it was X amount of this teacher, this TA, this whatever the positions were to
And
get
so-
that amount.
And
So
maybe I'm not understanding. So the worst case scenario that we shared, I think in February, whenever it was 279 positions. That's still, the 279 is still the number. But we'll be able to pull back some, reduce that using the 3.1 million that's available out of the 5.5, because remember the 2.3 we're going to use for the natural attrition. So maybe I'm not understanding. Are you asking what's vacant, what's currently vacant out of the 279 positions?
no, from the conversation with my colleagues, I think it was putting those numbers back in to see of the 279, what were we able to keep? Does that make sense?
So that's what we need for you guys to decide, is whatever you decide that equals 3.1 million.
Based on the balance of the 5.5 million that the county
Yeah,
commissioners has
that's
accrued
right.
in addition to give us.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah, so that's what we need from you, and then we can plug that in and make sure it equals the 3.1, and then we would bring a budget back for the board to approve.
So do you have a menu?
So am I hearing correctly that the sheet that we got with the 279, you want us to go through that one?
Yeah.
And go line by line, I want to take off, and mine is at home sitting on my counter, so I can't, I have notes all over it, but,
We can copy.
Well, you
No,
could.
I mean, do you want us to do that?
You could, but my thought was coming in today, and I may have misread this meeting completely, was that you kind of already did that when you did your priorities at the last meeting.
Right.
And you identified your top,
Okay.
you know, the EC teachers, the ECTAs, the AIG, and I'm sorry if I missed one. But so now, I think where we are is if you've already identified those priorities, out of those priorities, how many of each one, so do you want to try to reduce 279 positions that we can fund? And so if I can get an idea from the board as a whole, you know, we want our first priority or this number of EC teachers, or this number of EC teacher assistants, or this number of AIG, you can kind of give that to me in an order, then I can go as far down the line as I can, and then I can bring that budget back to the board. That would be my recommendation, but of course, the will of the board, or however you want to proceed.
Mason?
Come back to me. Sorry.
Bradford?
So you're saying we make a list of what we can buy for $3.1 million based on the priorities that we already established back, you know, in April. We make that, and we've already done it, so all we have to do is bring those two things together, right? Okay.
So if we can use Dr. Faust's analogy that if you put something in, then we got to pull something out.
Right.
So there are people on that list, positions on that list that we got to pull out. And so, and there's a lot of them, you know, with that. So that's the part that, you know, I was looking for you to say, this is what I and my team think is in our best interest. You know, given some of these priorities, you know, that we can do, but if we're plugging in 29 teachers and 23 EC teachers, then we are pulling out 52 positions off of that 279. Which are those? And I think that we need somebody to say, you know what, this is really hard, but I think we need to not have that position. Or we can do it without that position for now.
Mason? Well, since you left your notes, you put in tell us what you think.
I don't. I mean, I don't have my notes, so but I don't want to be the one that says, take off and
Who does?
Nobody does, but you know what? That's not necessarily our job. It is Dr. Faust and his team's job to say, this is hard, and you're going to have to trust us on this. And so then it's up to us to go, okay, we're going to trust you because you've gotten a little bit of what we've said, but there's just way too many out there. And if we're going to be, you know, even contemplating cutting back, then, and I know we can't do it with the 7 because they have contracts, but if we're going to be making certain people not have a good supplement, then everybody should have to, you know, including the board, we should have to cut into our money if that's what we really want to do.
And I'm not asking to cut anybody's pay rate. I'm just saying if we were reevaluating future people coming on just to talk about sustainability. So I'm not saying let's go and slash everyone's salary. That was not my conversation of looking at that. I just need to put that out there.
So just for more clarification, the reason why we don't have a position analysis ready to go is one, but then the positions that we have, I'm going to see if I can say it this way. So the positions that are on the table technically may not be those positions that will be the ones because we have attrition. Mm-hmm. And if we meet it through attrition, those positions stay. Mm-hmm. That's why as the superintendent, everyone's like, tell us. I have to find the exact number, and I'm pointing over there because it's HR
It's
has to
coming, yeah.
verify it, and then Ashley's team, finance has to make sure that that's the right number. And so as everyone gets up in arms, natural attrition, I would hope, would take care of it. But if it doesn't, so I'm going to continue with the hiring freeze until I don't know when, unless it's,
We are continuing.
it will, until we can figure out, because we still have people that have to be placed,
Gotcha.
that I can't go ahead and post a position out for outward facing versus the internal. So it is really hard. I mean, there have been sleepless nights, the frustration, and it's because you have, and so I think on a, like there may be 180, and I'm making up a number.
Yeah.
There may be 180 positions that are in attrition. So you take 180, and they may not be any of those people on that list. So we've already got 180 over there. And then they bought back 79. So you do 180 plus 79. But out of that 180 positions, how many of those are essential positions? That's where it becomes more like an algebraic equation, because you have an X, and you've got to get to, yes. And so we have to figure it out. And that's why my days are, and I'm always calling meetings with HR and finance to see if we can get there. And then the other part of it is we're closing and we're opening at the same time, and we don't have a budget. So it's, I know it's hard, and you're like, well, what do we need? We just need someone to say we accept the 5.5, and then we can figure it out, because they still have positions that are coming in as individuals are retiring. We're separating from the district. But is it 280 people who have resigned? I don't know if that's on the list. They have, but they haven't been essential. I mean, some of those are essential positions that are in there.
There are some
It
essential
sounds
people on that 280 list.
So they're so wait a minute. People who resign, essential people would be a principal. So we have had principals who resign, so we have to pull them back off because that position doesn't count. It goes because you have to have that position.
Ms. Mason?
So I'm going to preface this by saying I don't want to remove any positions of EC teachers, TAs, and AIG teachers. But doing the math based off of the numbers that Ms. Sutton has given us, I would recommend that 17 EC positions, all 17 EC teacher positions be saved, 12 of the AIG teacher positions be saved, and 23 of the ECTA positions be saved.
Making that in a motion?
I am making that in a motion.
Say that again, please.
All 17 EC teachers, teacher positions saved. 12 AIG teacher positions saved, because that equals the 29 certified positions that Ms. Sutton gave us. And the remaining 23 classified be the ECTAs.
Okay, is there a second?
I'll second that.
First and second. Further discussion?
Do we want, I know what you're doing. I would like us to consider amendment that said we're going to accept what the county has offered us, doing this with the 3.1 million, and you're going to bring that to us on Tuesday so we can see it?
So what we would do is, before you make a motion to accept all that makes me really nervous when you just give out numbers, because we've got to take something. You put something in, so I've got to pull something out.
But she took out the 3.1.
But I need to make sure all of that matches so that we don't have overages. And so we can do an analysis and give you that, and so you will see it. Because what I don't want you to have to do is we vote and promise you something that we can't, the district cannot deliver. So we have those numbers, and if we can make that into, bring forth an analysis for you, then we can show you how much, because yes, Ashley has a computer up, but Ashley isn't the only one. There's like a team of them that's clicking, and we call them the computers. They go in and they literally bring some forth. So it's, yes, to your question, we can bring back that information and we can make sure that all of the revenue is going to fall like it's supposed to.
Like Ms. Mason just, Vice Chair Mason just said. So do you want us to trust you to approve what the county has given us with the stipulation, or do you want us to wait till Tuesday to approve what the county's given us?
Which one would you prefer, Ashley? Because I'm just nervous. My shoulders are hurting right now.
I'll just ask for a little bit more direction, and I would prefer to bring something back to the board so you can see what it looks like, and then you would vote based on what I bring back. I will say AIG teachers are more expensive than regular teachers, average teachers that I costed out, so just rough estimate, like Dr. Faust is saying, please don't hold me to this, but I think we're about 700,000 over. They usually have higher local supplements as well. So if, to get back in balance, if I have to reduce any of those positions, what positions would I reduce to balance if I needed to? That way I can make sure I bring back a balanced budget.
That becomes real tricky.
And that's what her job is.
Based off of our priorities, EC would be, based off our
The
the board
ECTA.
priorities. This is not Melissa Mason speaking, this is board priorities. We said EC teachers first. That's what we said, as a board. Sure thing.
So, if my shoulders hurt, your shoulders have to hurt. So, if you'll check your, I sent you some personnel information. We're going to have to add in. So you've got to do something different. That's what makes it, that makes it more tricky because they're about, I did, about 16 more positions possibly.
Is that what you sent in the last 24 hours?
Mhm.
Can you go over it with us, just because it's been a
So
long
that
couple of
is letting us know that we were in the compete status with Head Start, and we did not win the compete.
Oh, that.
Yes.
Yeah, we just got-
So-
I thought you were talking about something with salaries, and we had a certain number of them, we were gonna have to pick up that.
Oh, the spiking, that's,
Yes,
yeah,
that.
that's an easy one.
Okay,
We
all
can,
right.
yeah, that,
So we
yeah,
didn't
we
get
can
Head
definitely,
Start.
we did not get the Head Start.
What happens now if we didn't get?
We have to fund those positions.
Oh, correct.
Yes. And so that, they have a different type of certification. So we'd have to pull all their certifications, so they probably have like a birth to K.
How much is that?
So the problem is, which now you take some of the puzzle pieces away, because if they can only teach kindergarten, because they're only certified, but that's what we then have to find, kindergarten doesn't turn over that easily. Right. So that's why I was like, if you bring this, we have to bring an analysis for this one, because it's gonna get a little tricky.
So when we were talking earlier, you asked for what we want priority-wise. We've given that, and then I gave a little more specifics, but you don't want the specifics. So I think we all, and maybe I'm not understanding correctly, but can you provide some clarification? What do you want from us? Because we have already given you our priority list, and I think that is what everything should be based off of. And I could be wrong, and my fellow board members can correct me, but
So-
could you just tell us
Yeah,
what
we
you
are-
need from us?
We're not, I'm just saying, you have to understand that that also came into play. But those numbers, what that means is that all those, the 17, 12, and 23, we have to also then add whatever, we have to go through and look and see what's in that one, and we've got to add that one too, so you're going to have,
A change in the numbers.
yes, that's basically all I'm saying.
Do you have even a ballpark of the Head Start numbers?
We don't, actually, we don't. Yeah.
And legally, schmegally, and I'm going to be that way, we do have a motion and a second in front of us, so if we want to remove that motion, we need to do something about it.
Oh, because
I can rescind my motion.
Why don't you make a motion to come back?
Yeah, and,
What it would say to us.
okay, I move that we delay until Tuesday, and we ask you to do what Ms. Mason asked, with the 17, the 12, and the 23 for EC being saved, AIG being saved, and ECTAs being saved, and you factor in the Head Start and bring that to us on Tuesday.
Great, wait a minute, I need a second. We have a second.
Second.
Okay, yes, great.
Okay, so the EC is just one portion of student support services. And so I think we need to make sure that we've got all, I mean, because that's a big chunk of what we do. in the school district. So I think we need to factor that in. And then you had talked with us before about, although not ideal and schools don't like it, the AIG teachers sharing schools, just like our itinerant teachers have to share schools. And so that might be something that we factor in, that we, and I know the AIG teacher's watching, and I'm sorry, but we may have to, some schools have a higher need than others. So we may have to share that, and those teachers, AIG teachers, can go back into a classroom temporarily, this year, or the year coming up, and they could come back out, and be AIG. So I think that if those kind of discussions are viable, for sharing, and then looking at, I'm a little nervous in our, just knowing the amount of emails that we get that are student support services related. Just to kind of take a look at what that overall budget kind of looks like. And I don't know, I don't have my list, so I don't know which ones are on the list, but I'll go home and memorize it now. But
All right, so we have a motion and a second to delay, Bradford brought forth, to delay our discussion.
Until the gender review, is that what?
Until the Tuesday.
But not like a full-blown discussion, little mini.
I'm
not doing this whole thing all
I'm not
year.
promising. Last
No, I don't
week
think we
were 4.5
should
hours. so-
define mini, yeah.
Yeah.
Presentation.
Any discussion on that motion? If not, all in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Carries 5-0.
Mr. Chairman, do you want us to definitively vote to deal with a meeting with the county, or call it on or call it off, or do we just leave that out there in limbo?
We can, I would entertain a motion if we want to, but I think we need to clarify whether we're just going to have a meeting with the county commissioners, or whether we're going to follow Mr. Vogel's advice and, in more of a structured meeting. There's one has a mediator there and goes through that thing. I think.
Is it 7 business days, or is it 7 calendar days? Because if we...
No, you said we had till next Monday. I wrote it down.
7 calendar days.
Okay, so then if we are waiting until Tuesday, then we're forfeiting that 7 days.
That's a good point, yeah. So if we wait until Tuesday without a meeting, then we forfeit. So I don't have an opinion. I'd go with whatever the will of the board is.
I'm just thinking that the county commissioners do not want, based on my conversations, they do not want to meet with us on this anymore.
Obviously.
Yeah, and that they were pretty adamant that, and we're adding in all these other things to say, and then if they repeated it once, they repeated it 3 times. We're giving you, 9.72, so they're already calculating that stuff in, so I don't think that they're interested in talking to us. So unless we're going to sue them, then I don't know that, and I'm sure they're watching, or they will go back and look at this.
They're probably going to get some emails. They don't like those.
Yeah. So
I just
those
want
are
the
just
will
points
of
of,
the board to be-
info that,
Well, I would entertain, if anyone wants to make a motion to do that. If not, I'd entertain a motion to adjourn. Or we can take a roll.
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
Thank you. I'll second that. All in favor of adjourning, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed. We are adjourned. Thank you to everyone.